How's it going, folks? It's Jakeegle the Eagle here, back at it again with another devlog, but this time not Punchball. This time we're going big, very, very big, into the next game, which is my very first Unity 3D game. So without further ado, let's roll the intro. At this time, I'd like to officially welcome each and every one of you to the very first edition of the Project Valhalla Devlogs. This game has been a long time in the works, and I have been anxious to work on it. This game is the first in a long line of games I plan to post in what's known as the MIGU, or Marithian In-Game Universe. I'll explain what the Marithian part is at a later date, but just know for now that it's my universe in which I've created for this world and its characters. Speaking of which, that's the first thing we gotta do to get started. So let's get on it.
This is the main character for Project Valhalla. Her name is Jade, and as you can see by the tiara on her head, she is royalty where she comes from. She will be voiced by the ever awesome Kyra Jackson, and I encourage you to go check out her stuff in the description.
Okay, so what we gotta do before we can even think about opening up Unity 3D is actually to open up Blender 3D and start working on the model for Jade. So let's go ahead and get that going.
Alright, we're all good to go.
Alright, so here's what we're gonna do. 1, we're gonna set up the flat mask shape. 2, we're gonna shape out the face. 3, we're gonna model the rest of the head. 4, we're gonna polish everything as best as we can on the head. 5, we're gonna model the neck. And 6, we're gonna polish the neck. And then after all that, we're done.
Just a quick warning, there is some missing footage, so I'll do my best to fill in the blanks as we go. So with step 1, we're going to do a very easy and basic setup. If you want to get a quick and easy face going, you can do it by taking a plane in Blender, shrinking it down to the size of the bottom of the nose and the top of the lip, split it in half, then use a mirror modifier to, mirror the plane on the other side, and then just start extruding things.
Just to be 100% clear, these steps in detail can be found in a series on character modeling in Blender done by a YouTuber named Darren Lyle. I'll post his YouTube in the playlist down in the description, so if y'all want to model your own characters, you can watch his steps because they're really easy.
So maybe the extruding things bit is just a little bit vague, but in the video, Darren Lyle says he extruded points to match the muscles of the eyes and mouth, so that's what I did. I'll tell you guys there were a lot of steps I took on my own that Darren Lyle did not do that I will explain here in a minute.
I'll tell you guys about something I forgot to add in the script. In the video, in order to fill in the cheek areas, Darren Lyle usually just used the fill-in points. However, I used a mixture of filling in certain points and extruding more vertices so I could have a little bit more control later on, but I forgot to write that in, so there you go.
The mask took a while, but I eventually did get it done, but holy,
that's a lot of vertices. Yeah, I do want Jade to be a high definition character, but when I initially got the mask done, I had a feeling that this would cause problems for my computer later on, and it did.
I'll explain why later, but for now, since the mask was done, it was time to start pulling points out to get a 3D shape going. This step in concept is easy, as you're just pulling points down the line on the x-axis and pulling them just behind whatever point you move last on the y-axis. But what I have found is with complex characters such as Jade, you need to take it out of orthographic view so you can see what you're doing. Not only that, but like a lot of this process, it's very time consuming. When I was done, I had to do what amounted to a low-res, low-poly making of Jade, which I was super happy about, but I noticed something that really bothered me. It was her nose. Her nose had almost no defined shape to it, and it was hard to tell where her cheeks ended and her nose bridge started. With that in mind, however, I did have a plan to fix it. The very first thing I did was try to move points over to squeeze in the bridge and get some more shape around the nose. This did help to a degree, but the nose still looked cartoony. Jade as a character is meant to look stylized, but also to have realistic features, so having a cartoony nose just wouldn't work. One thing that helped a bit more was actually raising up the top lip edge and extruding more points to cover the lip. This added both more lip detail and better shape around the bottom of her nose.
Except now we got gaping holes in her nose.
Yeah, that actually was on purpose. One thing I did notice that helped a lot was that the shape was caused by not having any actual shape around her nostrils. At this point, they were being covered by faces, so the next step was clearing that area so we could make the nostrils. At first, I tried making new points for the nostrils entirely, but this ended up being messy, so I did away with it and did something simpler. I extruded points around the nostril lines and lined everything up.
Alright, that's looking much better.
There was just one more thing I needed to do to get her nose looking roughly about how I want it to, and it was to define the sides of her nose. This is relatively simple. I did the same thing I did with the nostrils. Cut a hole where the bumps were and extruded points over to create the definition. Then, after a bit of connecting, adjusting, and filling, I had the basic nose shape complete. There was just one major issue with the nose left to complete, and that was making the tip of the nose look rounded and not like a thin razor blade that can slice enemies with a single headbutt.
That would be pretty cool though.
So yeah, I think you guys get the point with what I'm about to do next. Okay, so there's actually a script error here. From what I was watching in my rough footage, it looked like I worked on the cheekbones first before I finished up the rest of the nose, but I didn't. But for the nose, I did the exact same thing as before. Cut out a hole, extruded some points, make it look round. But on the nose, I actually extruded on both the Y and X axis, but I didn't do the X axis points until a little bit later. So yeah, there you go. Okay, I see where the confusion is, because the next thing that we were going to work on is actually the cheekbone points around her face, because it was looking a little too raised up and puffy, and also a bit flat and not round. So at this point, it was also the time where I decided to add in the subdivision modifier to make it look more rounded and smooth that way, and she looks so much better. Don't get me wrong, this is still a very rough model, but all in all, the subdivision model looks a lot better than the rough model. It was easy to get the cheeks going, so I decided to work back on the nose, but this time, in order to get the full roundness going, I decided to extrude points on the x-axis because I did it on the y, x-axis being left to right, and y-axis being up and down. I figured this would help me get better control of how the nose looked, but it also had a pretty nasty side effect.
Now this is a combination of a lot of things, but essentially the rough result was very bumpy and had a lot of imperfections. It's really hard to get it precise off of pure modeling alone, especially with this many vertices. So I decided to try and use the sculpting tools to help.
However, again, because of the amount of vertices and a GTX 1660, otherwise known as a medium power graphics card, whenever I try to do anything with the subdivision modifier on, it runs so slow. I learned later that when I'm just moving points, I can turn it off and it runs like normal. But I pretty much need to sculpt with the modifier on so I can get an accurate look of the model. In other words, this process was annoyingly painful and still ended up looking somewhat rough.
I believe here also this is where my first footage loss happened, so I'll say here that I did the best I could with the nose, but I think I either need to lower the vertices somehow or readjust the points manually later.
The next thing was the head. Okay, now this is where the reference and the model contradict with each other a bit. See, on the front view, when you look at Jade's head, you'll notice it's kind of ballooned upward a bit. The shaved part doesn't look like it keeps a consistent size, and what I think is going on here is that part of her head is just there for reference to show you what it's supposed to look like. Because when I tried modeling it based on the front view, it just doesn't work. Beyond that, in order to get the head shape going, all I needed to do was go into the y-axis view and extrude the points to come around, and also judge where her head would be under her hair. And that's a bit difficult too. This version of her looks super strange. Wow. Like, wow. Not even the rough of the face looked this bad. But it's okay. We're going to work through it.
I guess Jade is going to be
a lot of this was the same as the nose and face, just moving points around. But I had to move a lot of the points down and over to get that roundness. And I did a lot of adjusting to make sure the top didn't like a natural mohawk. I also tried using the smooth tool again, but as before, no dice. Too slow with the subdivision on.
I also noticed her eyes were off, so I readjusted them to get them in place. And I also did the same thing I did to the nostrils to pull the eyes actually in so they look a little bit more realistic. And now we're reaching the end.
The next step was getting the neck formed in shape. Now, this was pretty difficult to do. Throughout this entire process, I've had to delete points and make repairs on the model, but this ended up being the most annoying bit to do that on. So I started modeling her jaw and getting the points ready there. I believe this was the most point adjusting part of the event, because I had to realign my points on the jaw a couple of times, but after a while I got everything to fit and it looked nice and neat. As stated before, it was the actual neck that was difficult. There was a middle line of points that would always be pulled inwards when I tried to connect everything up and start the neck, and it made a big gap underneath her chin. I deleted and remade the points multiple times over. Unfortunately, I lost this bit of footage too, so I don't know exactly how I solved it, but I was finally able to start extruding the points down.
Okay, I don't know what is it with me and squares, but take a look, y'all. Her neck is square. She's literally a blockhead. Oh my lord, I'm done. Project's over, bye.
No, but for real, a lot of this model has been square. Luckily, I've been able to fix it most of the time. Even the neck was easy in that regard. Just some point adjustment and we were good.
And with that, we have reached the end. The next steps is starting the torso and the shoulders and smoothing the rest of it, whatever we need, like the back of the neck, some of her head, etc., etc. Once I'm done with all of that, we'll be moving on to the arms and legs. I want to thank you guys so much for the support throughout Punchball and in this video as well. As of now, I have a total of 91 subscribers and have since started posting on Instagram where I've gained a few more followers, totaling in 42. Oh yeah, did I mention I have social media accounts? I have an Instagram, I have a Facebook, and I have a Discord that I will link in the description. I'd appreciate it if you check them out, as your support is what will make this game successful. As always, have a blessed day, and don't forget your coffee.